Hello, welcome to another maplewoodian.com podcast reporter roundtable. We are a roundtable of two this week, but as exciting as ever with Philip Sean Curran from the News Record. Philip, how are you?
Joe, doing well. How are you?
Good, and also we always want to give the plugs, maplewoodnavigator.com.
Right.
And pick up your News Record every Thursday. I usually don't have to pick it up because I get it mailed to me, but I was actually at the train station. Well, I had to go in the city on Thursday, so I actually picked up a copy, so they got me to buy two this week. And it is also in the easy-to-read tabloid format now. We talked to Christina as the managing editor recently, and that, I think, has made it even more easier to handle and read. So,
but just not tabloid journalism yet.
No, the tabloid, I use that phrase because I used to work at editor and publisher, and in the newspaper parlance, the phrase tabloid is strictly for the way that it's formatted, like an opening of a book, as opposed to the traditional newspaper. And unfortunately, some of the newspapers like the New York Post have given tabloid a bad name, but News Record brings it back to a good name. But let's start talking about a lot of things. Before we went on here, we were going over some issues. I think, to me, the one thing I was following this week was the Tuesday elections, which Kathy Leventhal and Jerry Ryan, who are running for re-election, ran unopposed in the Democratic primary, and of course Barack Obama ran unopposed, essentially, so people might not have cared to vote for those candidates, even if they liked them, and of course they all won that primary. But we did have two interesting races. One was the 10th congressional seat, which had 6 candidates running, including Donald Payne Jr., who ran and won to replace his father, passed away in March, and Ron C. Rice, son of State Senator Ron Rice, who did not win, but had a stronger showing among the challengers. And, of course, Mayor DeLuca endorsed him. What did you find in that race? I mean, I always joked that a lot of people might have, I wonder how many people thought they were voting for Donald Payne Sr., and there really wasn't much of a fight there, although he had a lot of candidates. And it is Maplewood's congressional seat that had really been locked up by Payne for, several decades.
Well, I think, just to sort of touch it at one at a time, the Township Committee race, as you said, was unopposed.
Right.
Jerry Ryan and Kathy Leventhal actually only have one Republican opponent.
Yes, and he ran unopposed.
And he did, and even though there are 2 seats, so essentially one of the incumbents is guaranteed to win, and the Republican hasn't won in Maplewood since the early 1990s, and there's been no sign that trend is going to change anytime soon, even though Art has lived here his entire life, close to 70 years, I believe. And if there is any residual effect of the crowded primary for the congressional seat, was it did affect sort of the composition of the district leaders of the Democratic Party. The candidates had different slates for different district leaders, people sort of on the ground type of races, and actually Kathy Leventhal was running for her district leader in her part of town and wound up losing to someone running on this other one of the opposite slates, and that was true in another contest. So there were some changes there.
Right, and we spoke with Ian Grobman this week about the district Democratic committee that essentially votes on who to endorse and does other work for the party in Maplewood. They have 21 voting districts in Maplewood, and there is a Democratic leader. There are 2 Democratic leaders for each district. And oddly, the rule or the policy has been a man and a woman in each one, which is kind of interesting. But to your point, for people who don't know, Kathy Leventhal was also a district leader, as is Vic DeLuca and Ian Grodman. And I know Kathy lost her seat, and another veteran district leader, Marion Rabb, who is also, I know her as a Tuscan parent, she lost by 1 vote. And Ian Grodman himself was challenged pretty severely, he told me, and apparently he kept his seat, and I believe DeLuca also kept his seat.
Yeah, actually, it was in that case, the mayor was running with his wife, Janie, and actually he beat his wife by 1 vote for that district leader's seat. So
He was running. What do you mean running with her? They were both running for the two
It's
seats.
a man and a woman for each district, and they were running on the same little.
So they are both. They are the district leaders for their district.
Correct.
Interesting.
In that area of town.
I didn't know that.
They both live on Lexington Avenue.
Has she been Has she been a district leader before this, or was this her first?
I want to say I'm not without being 100% sure. I just want to say yes. She actually he got 72 votes to her 71. So
very interesting. But yeah, to see Kathy Leventhal basically win unopposed for her township committee seat, right. And I'm looking at the votes. She actually got about 52 more votes than Jerry Ryan, and there were 19 write-in votes, which is always interesting. But for her to win pretty decisively, even unopposed, and then lose the district leader seat, that's kind of interesting.
Odd.
Yeah, but nothing is unusual nowadays. But that shouldn't really seem to affect. I mean, is that any comment on her situation, or?
It's hard to say. I mean,
yeah.
She's actually running for her fourth consecutive term.
Right.
And she's been there now for this is her 9th year, and she's going for another 3. So she's actually turning out to be one of the longest-serving members of the governing body, at least in recent memory.
Yes.
So we'll see.
Now, was it odd that she lost to someone who had been on the Ron Rice slate?
Again, without having
and then
covered,
the mayor was supporting Rice. So was he opposing her in district leadership? I wouldn't think so. But
again, at the risk of not having, I didn't really cover that race so closely, just because there was really no contested primaries in the two towns in Maplewood for the township committee seat.
Right. So that's so we will have another Payne in office, and he'll probably be pretty safe in that seat because it's a pretty safe seat, and they have a good organization there, barring any unforeseen circumstances.
Well, right now, if I recall, he's a city councilman.
Yes, Newark City Councilman.
And now he's going to Congress. So he's going to have to give up something. Give up a couple of those other seats. So I mean, to the extent people follow Newark,
I think he'll be glad to give up the Newark council seat to go to Congress. But yeah, that'll mean that Newark will have a race to fill. And as I understood it, this election actually had 2 elections. There was one to fill Donald Payne Sr.'s unexpired term, which means that Donald Payne Jr. will take the seat pretty immediately then, correct? That's what I understand it. And then there was another election to run in November in the primary, which he also won. So in essence, he will take the seat sooner.
Right.
And then if he wins in November, which is likely, then he begins a new term. So
I don't know exactly, Joe. I don't really know exactly when he's being sworn in for to fill out the unexpired term of his late father, but. And actually, the congressional seat is for both towns, in fact. So South Orange, which was formerly represented by Bill Pasquale, when the redistricting was done, he lost South Orange, and he was and Don Payne became the representative there.
Right, and Pasquale had his own battle for his new seat because New Jersey lost a congressional seat in the recent census.
With actually 2 congressmen running for the same seat in the district.
Okay, so let's move on to another issue that came up this week. Property tax assessments. And
the long and short of it is that in the past 2 years there have been, and I just want to double check my numbers, but close to 900 appeals. And actually, the exact total is 889. That's just with the county tax board. So people who have larger assessments, like the country club, they can appeal directly to the county tax court. But anyway, even for the most part, you have residents who are appealing their tax bills, and to the tune of close to 900 of them in this year and last year combined. That's when there's successful appeals, it affects the town's rateable base, which has gone down by nearly $14 million in the past year.
And you're talking strictly Maplewood or Maplewood and South Orange?
No, this is strictly Maplewood.
So they've had more than 900 assessment appeals in the last
tax appeals
in the last 2 years.
12, correct, combined.
And how much is that higher than usual?
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to say off the top of my head what's an average number of appeals in a given year, but
it is on the increase.
This year was just astronomically high. Astronomically.
And we'll advise people you are going to have a story on this coming up, so we want to make sure everyone tunes back into Maplewood Navigator, and we will link to it when it comes up. But you said the township committee this week
they hired
did something on this?
Hired a firm that will be responsible for revising the numbers. It's actually the same firm, Appraisal Systems Inc., and they have offices in different parts of the state. But this firm will update the numbers. It's called a reassessment, not a revaluation. So there's not people going to be in your house doing measurements.
Oh, please. We've had enough of revaluations.
So they'll be relying on the sales data to update the numbers, which would go into effect for 2013.
But you're talking about they're only reviewing those who have appealed.
No. The reassessment is going to be for the entire town. So essentially, the numbers are going to change for everybody. Commercial, residential, and even the numbers will likely be changed for even people who don't even pay taxes, like churches and things like that.
So why are they doing this now when they just had a revaluation?
Well, again, it is because of the assessments. The mayor had a chance to interview him briefly after the meeting on Tuesday, and he called it, quote-unquote, an offensive, end-quote, maneuver by the town to do this, to stem the flow of these tax appeals, stem the tide. Obviously
So they will take what the revaluation they just did and take that data and reassess it?
Well, they're going to update it.
I see.
Completely update those numbers for everybody. And that's going to be starting. The numbers won't be on the books, so to speak, until next January. Just to give you, just to back up one step.
Please.
I'm sorry, Joe. I was just going to say, in terms of that total we just mentioned about all the tax appeals, in 2011 there were 325.
Oh, so it's definitely a lot higher.
This year, 564. So when you sort of look at the sum total, it's very high, and it's substantially more than it's been in the past.
So would the thought be this reassessment will be to stop some appeals?
Stem the flow. Stem the flow, because obviously, the idea behind these things is to sort of bring them in line with the market value.
Right.
Now,
so would most people see likely tax reduction or increase, or is mixed bag?
I think it really, like with the reval, I think it might just depend. Just as a quick aside, they did hire, like I said, the firm, so they're spending $60,000 on this. The money's going to either come out of just surplus monies or monies from the sale of the former police headquarters on Donnell Road.
So we're paying how much?
$60,000
for this review, reassessment.
It's called reassessment.
But that could very well mean lower taxes for some and fewer appeals.
I think the goal, I think, is the appeals issue, and just to not get bogged down in the minutia. Your property assessment for someone who might look at the tax bill, that's based how they calculate how much you're going to pay in county, municipal, and school taxes. So in Maplewood, most of your tax bill, about 58% or so, close to 60%.
Yes, most of it goes to the school. Yeah,
and the rest is divided between the county and the municipality.
Excellent. Okay, one other thing we want to look at is the pool. Speaking of township costs, although, as we know, the pool is self-sustaining. But I've been following some things about this where the pool had a major renovation.
It had a very big renovation, actually.
And it was delayed, but then there was talk of going to the country club for some of these pool parties. The mayor worked a deal in which the country club would hold the pools, and we would use this construction fee to cover the township cost, and the PTAs would cover it with their fee they normally put that would be a little higher. And then now it turns out the pool is going to open June 16th for longer hours than usual. We just found out 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. that Saturday and Sunday. And all the school pool parties and a good number of other pool parties that were going to go to the country club are now going to be at the pool. What is the
just to
behind
sort of
this?
walk us through it, essentially, in October the work started on what would be a $1.3 million renovation to add a double slide, handicap ramp, redecking the entire pool. And just to be clear, it's better to think of it as a pool complex. There's more than one pool there.
Wait, you're sounding like a promotional person for the township here. No, I'm kidding. You're right, and it's going to have the great new slides, which I know my kids are excited about. Yeah.
For kids and people who act like
so
kids.
It's definitely a well timed renovation, new slides, and we've all written about the 30% pool fee hike that's going with it. But I think most of that is pretty worthwhile in most cases. But go ahead.
I was going to say so the pool actually has a grand opening, the ribbon cutting and all that, on the 16th. They're actually the first group that's going to be using the pools this weekend. Those the Girl Scouts for an event. And the pool season, as many people know, runs from June 16th to the 3rd. And the town actually, in its calculations, anticipated there would be a slight drop off in pool membership
because of the higher rates.
Because of the higher rates.
That makes sense.
They're hoping that it's a wash. Last year there were around 7,000 members, which run the gamut from adults, seniors, kids, half-season membership, etc. So they're optimistic they'll be able to get to that number again this year, but they didn't, for its purposes, anticipate that there would be a 5% drop-off because of the rate increase.
And do we know what happened with, I know one of the indications was the delay was because there was a problem with a handicapped element, and then I talked to one of the pool committee people who had said they thought that the company that did the renovation was was supposed to have it by a certain time in April, and they were delayed. Do we know what happened to speed things up?
I'd have to follow up. Be honest, Joe, I'd have to follow up with that. My understanding initially that the project that it went through. There was a mild winter, so that shouldn't have been an issue. But I can definitely. Yeah. I was going to follow up. We're planning to have a little story coming out this week.
Ah, very good.
So, but we'll try to get to the bottom of that.
Okay, and then reminder: we're talking to Philip Sean Kern of the News Record and MaplewoodNavigator.com. We'll just go into another quick item. Is that the meetings are going to be held out of town hall.
Right.
Because of air conditioning. I think I wrote about this a couple months ago, and you wrote about it as well when it was announced. But now the next meeting is, June 19th?
Right. They're going to...
and that'll be at the police station, the new police station?
Right. It's going to be in police headquarters starting the 19th, and then for the two meetings in July and one meeting in August and potentially even into September, but that'll depend on how hot it is. But I was speaking to one of the people in town hall. This is sort of like the first time, at least in recent memory, that the meetings are not going to be in that building. And possibly longer than recent memory in the last 20 or 30, 25 years or so.
Yeah.
Bit of an interesting quirk. I hope I don't make the stupid mistake of driving there, by road to at 7:30 and seeing no one around. But folks can go to the police headquarters and watch their government action. The meetings will be televised, so that's not going to be an issue. People will still watch it on their local cable TV channel.
Now, what is the cost of holding meetings in these different places versus the cost of having air conditioning? Why doesn't the chamber have air conditioning, or at least? Well,
it's actually it's an older building, and I'm actually trying. I was actually going to hopefully, as you say that, I was hoping maybe to get the details on how much it costs to configure to put the technology in to ensure that the meeting would be televised in the police headquarters. They'd actually, Joe, years ago, they had talked about that building being for that purpose too, to have meetings there.
I hear that's true. When they built the new police station, that's true.
Yes, a few years ago now. Actually, the building is, when we say it's a new building, it actually opened in 2008, so it's
right.
4 years. It's 4 years older. So.
And I know the municipal court area has a good amount of seating, and you could hold meetings there without a big problem. There aren't a lot of summer meetings anyway, right? Isn't there only once a month or something?
They don't have 2 meetings in August.
Yeah.
They have 2 meetings in July.
Yeah, so they don't have that many meetings. Were they going to have all the meetings in the summer there, or were they going to put them somewhere else too?
It's actually going to be through starting with this one, all the meetings in July, the one meeting in August, and potentially even in September. But the September one, as far as yesterday, that was still maybe a little bit up in the air. Okay,
great. Well, we also wanted to touch on 2 quick crime-related notes. Actually 3 I wanted to mention. The St. Joseph's church attack, where a woman was badly beaten on March 14th. That has remained very unsolved. The man was found in the morning. I actually heard it on the scanner at the time and wrote about it, and the woman was very badly beaten, and that's been almost 3 months. Nothing has come of it, and now the sheriff's office has put it out as one of their Crime Stoppers reward tips. $5,000 reward is now out for information that would lead to his arrest. And two other things, maybe you can touch on those, the two murders that have court proceedings occurring this week.
Yeah, there was, as maybe many people already may know, that there was a trial in the murder of there was a trial of a man charged with the murder of the transgender model who was shot to death in 2010 in September. That person, Alrashim Chambers, was found not guilty by a jury after a trial there in Newark. His co-defendant, who testified against him and implicated him in was sentenced to time served. He actually had been in the county jail since 2010, so it's been almost 2 years for him. So he was found. That was yesterday, and that, in some sense, means the case is unresolved. It's sort of someone killed that woman.
And the logic would seem to indicate it was one of them, because you have the two men were there.
One had the gun.
Yeah, and one of them testified against the other, apparently not well enough. I used to cover courts a lot, and I know you never know what a jury will do, and I wasn't in the courtroom the whole time, so who knows what was heard. But the gay rights person and the transgender rights person in me gets a little irked by this kind of thing, because you got to wonder how much the woman's sexual past, sex past, I shouldn't say sexual past, but changing of sex from male to female indicated this. You don't know. I don't know. I don't want to say the jury did something, but
the backstory is the victim was formerly James White. He actually James attended Columbia High School.
Yes, that was another link. I think you guys tracked that part down. That was a great link.
At some point in his life, he had a sex change operation in Asia, and then became Victoria Carmen White, and the tragedy of it is that Victoria Carmen White met these two guys. They were at a club in Newark, and then came back. Not Newark, Irvington. Came back to a cousin's apartment in Maplewood on
Jacoby, right?
And was shot and killed in September of 2010. Basically, just the trial was that the two defendants essentially implicated each other. Implicated the other. The defendant testified. So did the Marquise Foster, who was the co-defendant. So, in some sense, there's been no resolution of the case, and there won't be, since there's no double jeopardy.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just something doesn't smell right in this case, because unless one of them knew of someone else who had killed her, but that's the jury system. And then the other case. Talk about that one. That's going to go to trial.
Well, the other murder is an earlier murder, also in 2010.
Right. On Henry Street.
It was Henry Place.
Henry Place.
The defendant in that case actually pleaded guilty. His name is John Staton. The backstory to this is that he and the victim met through what's been described as a telephonic chat room. They had sex. The victim was a man. They had sex at the victim's apartment there on Henry. He killed, John Staton killed, and has pleaded guilty to killing the victim. He put a bag over his head and hit him with an iron. And then while he was dying there in the apartment, Staton fled with the guy's car, the victim's car, took some other property. And there were plea talks going on, and essentially he took a deal that calls for him to receive an 18-year prison sentence. That's later this month. He's done time in the county jail already, so he'll get credit for some time served since 2010. But essentially, he's going away for a long time.
Very sad, but at least people are being caught, if not always convicted. But that is the jury system. That is the crime investigation.
In case people are interested in the Dwayne Flarney case, that case is still pending. I'm not aware of any developments. I'll obviously be checking on that, but he's the guy who Right
killed the grandmother and the father.
Apparently, it looks to be an adopted.
Yeah, that was another interesting piece that came out. That was on which street?
I don't recall off the top of my head, but essentially that was right around as the St. Joe's attack you mentioned, referenced a little earlier. That case is pending grand jury, and I'll double check. But what's really interesting, Joe, is a quick final point on this.
Sure.
The lawyer who represented Alfred C. Chambers, who was just found not guilty of the trial, is also representing Dwayne Flourney.
Interesting.
So it's kind of interesting. We sort of noted that when I would speak to him in the courtroom for this other case in the Victoria Carmen White homicide, he kind of mentioned that to me. So
he knows his territory. And another thing we should say, in all these cases, I don't think there is no indication in each of these three murder cases of any kind of danger in Maplewood. These are all people who knew the victims, knew their killers, or alleged killers, and in several cases from out of town. So it isn't as though this is any reflection on Maplewood being dangerous because of these situations. They all indicate that they were crimes related to people who knew other people and would not be any kind of threat to the general public or any indication of a danger level growing in Maplewood. So that's important to note. And I think that'll do it. So thank you, Philip. Sean Kern of the News Record, maplewoodnavigator.com.
Without Mary here, Joe. I feel without Mary.
Listen, we put out the word to Patch. They're, I guess, still trying to fill her shoes, which is very difficult. Mary Mann is now an editor. So she's joining the other side, as it were, from us reporters. Although I guess I'm an editor too on this site. But yeah, she's doing great things at Patch in Union County, and an associate editor. And I think Patch here is doing good coverage and trying to nail down some permanent changes as happens. But we'll keep talking, and maybe we can get some other voices from other news outlets along with. But we appreciate you guys being with us, and the News Record still doing great work. And again, at maplewoodnavigator.com. And are you on Twitter?
I believe I'm not personally, but I believe I'd have to double check, because I hate to sound like I'm a dinosaur still in the print media world, but I'd have to double check.
But I know they're on there because I do follow them. So if people go to Maplewood Navigator or News Record, they can. I think it's News Record. If you put News Record into the Twitter machine, it'll pop out the way to follow, because I do follow them. So that's very good. Thanks again, Philip, and everyone. Keep reading the News Record, keep reading maplewoodian.com, and we'll be back again probably in a week or so. So thanks again, Philip.
Joe. Bye-bye.